Hey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, not a problem.
This is great. So it's great that we can actually finally have a conversation. I've talked to so many of your cohorts over the last year or two, so it'll be cool
Oh,
to
that's
pick your brain.
that's wonderful. Wonderful. It's fun to finally meet you too. I know you've been talking with a lot of people that I know, and so it's my reputation has preceded me.
So for everybody tuning in, welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Paul Stephen Edwards. He is a cinematographer, a producer, filmmaker, writer, actor. I'm sure there's other things that you do that we don't know about. The list goes on and on and on. But yeah, I just wanted to have you on the show, pick your brain about so many things. I know you're a huge horror film fan. I guess I could even say fanatic, and I am as well. So that's pretty cool. And I guess one of the things I was interested in is what kind of got you into maybe was it kind of photography that led to
Hmm.
wanting to film, or was it just straight love of film, wanting to actually shoot things?
That's a really good question. My love for film goes back a long way. I'm 52 at this point, so I remember um, when you wanted to watch a film that it had to be on actual film, and you set up a projector and you watched it. And that I grew up in a church environment where we were always putting on films and things like that. I just remember always loving the physical aspect of the media at the time. And as it intersected with horror, um, the first horror movie that I ever watched was Mario Bava's Black Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty intense for a first one. That opening where they hammer the mask, the spiked mask onto her face. Uh, yeah, that really, really was like a formative moment. It was a moment of real, true horror. And I was interested enough in how these things happen, possibly to alleviate the anxiety of like, oh my God, that wasn't real, was it? Uh, that I started to learn how to do things, and eventually, in elementary school, I was in a experimental class program that provided 8 millimeter film cameras for us to work with. So I started from a very young age working with film and treating it as like motion picture things and doing a lot of stop motion and experimental things from a young age. And, those two things just sort of naturally intersected and took my life from there.
Excellent. So I think we're in a similar age bracket. You're just a few years older than me, and I have memories, and I'm sure you do too, of the reel to reels that we were kind of forced to watch
Mhm.
in elementary school and and even
Well,
middle school. And it was always like, a science class or a biology class where, they're showing, cow pies turning into mushrooms, reseeding grass or something. But the thing that I will never forget is the narrator always sounded like they were underwater. And it always literally sounded like a guy talking like this, and now we were going to discuss photosynthesis.
yeah, yeah, because the optical track or it was an optical audio track that was in those things. So after a while, you know how schools are. Those films get degraded over time. The sprockets fall down, everything like that. It would wobble, and as it wobbles on the playback, that's why it gives you that underwater sound. Like there's like a physical reason why that happened. I was really lucky to grow up in the state of Hawaii, where we had just sort of an amazing film department there. A lot of the movies that I grew up watching on those reel to reels were films of ancient Hawaiian legends and stories and histories that were just fantastically gory and yeah, I mean, just really sort of over the top. Nothing was professional, but it was like really authentic.
Oh yeah, so it's basically almost like a Polynesian kind of like grim fairy tales or something.
Exactly,
Where
exactly.
they had to water the grim tales down for us as kids to be sold as children's books, but those tales as they came from Europe, they were just morbid and like all the fucking kids died in those
Oh
stories.
yeah, oh
It's
yeah.
like that's why you don't go out after dark, kids. And so I know every culture has different versions of those cautionary tales. So that's kind of, I'm a huge horror when it comes to just any kind of learning about different cultures, and
Mhm.
also about as talking to your friend Linnea a few weeks ago,
Oh
any
right,
new and interesting ways for people to die in movies. We were
for
joking,
sure.
but it was just kind of like, you think you've seen it all, and then you sit there with somebody like in a Zoom chat and you talk for a while and you go, oh yeah, I guess I never saw anybody got, oh yeah, okay.
I gotta say, seen anyone thrown into a volcano in a major motion picture in a long time, and it's kind of overdue.
It is overdue. And to have somebody battle or fight somebody on the lip of a volcano and then crawl out and be like half alive, half melted
Mm.
or something. Um, those are the things I think about. I kind of wonder. I was talking to somebody else about this too, where I saw an interview a couple of years ago with Stephen King. He was saying he was just like in a foul, grumpy, shitty mood, and he was trying to do something. I don't know if it was some kind of a puzzle or something with his wife, and she was just like, threw a puzzle piece down and was just like, enough. Just go in the other room, do it, write something, do what you got to do, and then come back when you're more reasonable. And it's just so funny that like his process where he said, yeah, I just went in the room and I thought about it for a little bit and I created this creature from another planet, and I mutilated a couple of little old ladies, and an hour later I was great. I was in a great mood.
Hmm.
So it just
Yeah, there's
shows you the mind frame of certain people. So um
definitely something to say about the creative process, sort of taking your brain out of a bad place. I think a lot of us use horror to get us out of bad places, which is why I think my friends who are interested in horror and my fellow horror creators typically, like, we're some of the nicest, most well-adjusted people, because we've just, because we all know how horrible the world can be, and we sort of take it and then take that horror and I think reframe it in our own terms, in ways that we're comfortable with dealing with them, and that's the entertainment that we create.
Well, not only that, and I'll piggyback on what you're saying, is that it's so important, especially with everything that we've suffered through in the last year or two, to have that creative outlet, because we all have this mundane thing of work, paying bills, taking out the trash, yada yada yada, all this
Mhm.
horrible stuff, and then even the normalcy of that was taken away in the last 2 years. And so it's just been so vastly important for just everybody, doesn't matter what you do, to have that creative outlet. Because I brought this up many times in interviews, just during the lockdown, when you're cut off from friends and family, you're really only faced with yourself.
Mhm.
So you kind of have to self-generate and come up with ideas, and reach through the internet or phone or whatever, and kind of
Right.
create things. It's like, well, what can I do? I'm stuck at home. I can't, and as you know from the Zoom chat,
Mhm.
short film we made, it was like we can't even go to somebody's house and film them. We have to use the webcam, and we're kind of at the mercy of. But then that kind of gets your mind turning of like, okay, well, I can't, guide somebody's performance. It's just going to have to be like whatever they've got in their closet
Mm.
and whatever props they have sitting around. But um Yeah, I think you'll find too, and you probably have, that people are just so excited to just work on something, just to collaborate, just to be part.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been saying for a little while, the future is collaboration. When we started, among my other many things that I do is I work with a company called Black Mass. We're an immersive theater company, uh, pretty much, but we also have expanded into what we call virtual shows. We used to do physical theater shows. Now we also do them over Discord. We're running one right now, which is one of my partner, and also business partner Raina Chainsaw. She is also it's her. This is her show. It's her story. It's one of the most harrowing, scary things I've ever encountered. And the live version of this show was probably my favorite thing that I've ever staged. The virtual version is a completely different type of show, but I think it's as close to the live as we could have given it virtually, and it's really its own thing. They're finishing it this weekend, and I don't know if that one will be restaged, but we're also trying to come back and do live shows as well. We're planning for our next big show called Blindness, which will be written and directed by our other partner Alex, and that's what we do creatively here. For me, I'm also working over the pandemic. We developed a close collaboration with Joshua Simon and the Blackheart Collective, and uh, they're assisting us on this current show, My 90s Nightmare. And we're also, I'm going to be working with Joshua and Mel's from Twin Knives and Allison Darcy from, oh my gosh, Allison, I'm sorry, I forgot your production company, but we're coming together under the banner of four hardworking idiots, and we're creating a show called Avatar.
Okay, excellent.
So at the end of after spring, I will be able to have say that I worked on Avatar.
James Cameron and his endless Avatar sequels that we still haven't seen yet. One of the things I brought up to Linnea, and I don't know if she mentioned it to you guys or not, there is a Scottish film company that I've kind of been in touch with, and I've interviewed their head screenwriter, and I'm going to hopefully in a month or two interview their main director. They're called Hex Media. Done a
Mhm.
lot of feature films out of Scotland, self-produced and everything. And one of the things I think they started doing as things opened up last year after the lockdown, which I thought was genius, because they, like every struggling small, production company, is what do you do if you can't go on a
Mhm.
location and physically have like altercations? It's hard to do anything with violence or fight or stab or anything if you can't
Mhm.
get within 6 feet of somebody. So they started doing this thing, which I thought was genius, which they started renting out their film crew and a couple of their actors to people who want to play scary pranks on their friends. And they would dress someone up as one of the killers, so to speak, or
Right. Right.
mutated characters or something from one of their films, and they just set up a scene in the person's house with like the roommate or the family member's permission, and just stage a thing where they just literally scare the shit out of somebody, and they film it for YouTube, and they just
Mhm.
pay for maybe a couple $100 for the day for the use, because you're just basically setting up like a one camera, maybe a couple of hidden things. It only would take like an hour to set everything up, make sure you're hidden in the house, the crew is not visible, and then scare the piss out of the person. And it kind of caught on YouTube, and so that was actually a good way for them to make money on the side. When financiers were like, I don't know if we want to dump money into this because what if
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how people have had to pivot over the last couple of years. I never would have imagined finding myself doing anything on Discord, uh, or Zoom or anything for that matter if it hadn't been for this. And it created sort of a whole new world for people. I've met people from other countries. I've met people, you know, I've become very, very close to some of these people, and some of them have become my favorite people in the world, even though I've never physically met them. You know, that's that's fascinating that like companies have been able to do that.
Yeah, it's a brave new world, and I think a lot of people have kind of gotten sucked into the apathy and the confusion and the chasing your own tail aspect of what's been going on the last couple of years. And I kind of say, you know what, just reach out to your friends. There are other people doing different kind of creative things and projects. And sure enough, that usually begets something, because years ago when I used to do, background acting for extra money, it wasn't because I wanted to be human furniture on somebody's big colossal movie set. It was because you get together in that green room or at that lunch table and everybody networks. Everybody knows somebody who's doing a student film, or they're doing a play, or they're doing something. They're trying to shoot like test footage for a movie, and
Yeah,
they need like, well, hey, so and so needs somebody to come in and do like a 5 and under part where they walk into the house and take a fake knife to the neck and like, hey, are you free on Sunday or whatever?
mm-hmm.
And that's just how I personally kind of got into working on short films and reaching out to people who were working on things, because
Right.
I mean, at some point I could have become, SAG or whatever, but again, there's no guarantees in life that you're going to ever do um, huge
Exactly.
100 million
Exactly.
movies. It's just, I saw it as a way in to network and to find out what's going on. And I'm
I
sure,
know. I think I share with you that idea too. Like you're always sort of looking for like the next cool thing.
right. That's true. That's 100% true. So it's interesting you talk about a few minutes ago, you were talking about, watching movies when you were younger and kind of being grossed out, but then having that analytical mind of going like, well, I'm freaked out, but how did they do that? And one of
Hmm.
my earliest influences, and I'm sure half the people watching this were the early John Carpenter movies, where I'm going like watching The Thing, and I know it's stop motion, but I'm still going,
Yeah.
how the fuck did they get a head to look like a crab, you know,
Yeah.
falling off of a table? With fire going on around it. It's like, granted,
Yes.
those guys, granted, they 15 years before they were doing their college films and running around with Super 8 cameras and things,
Right.
and just testing stuff out that later they got to use. But I
Yeah. The thing's got a soft spot for me. That was my first R-rated movie.
oh wow.
I bought a ticket to see E.T. and then I walked into the thing. That was and yeah, it had blown my mind because I actually had just seen the original version of the thing, the one with James Arness, the
Oh,
black
the
and
thing,
white.
another plant world or something.
Yeah, yeah. I had just seen that maybe like 2 years before or something like that. I'd read the story first, Who Goes There?
Right.
And, I had a wonderful school librarian who introduced me to a lot of great genre stuff. And when I read that and discovered there was a movie, oh yeah, I was great. I saw the movie. They had to make it. I knew there was no way my parents would ever let me see this thing, so I did the I'm going to go see ET. which I had already seen. We'd already seen E.T. at the drive-in.
Right, right.
Scared my brother, and so like immediately, they were already in the no scary movies aren't going to work out for you. But I was determined. I was determined that I was going to see the thing, and I'm so glad that I did. It did sort of change everything in terms of like makeup effects and also just sort of what was possible. Like I didn't have it was the closest thing I think I remember at the time of seeing almost like a cartoon in real life, because it
Right.
was just like, whoa, like I've never seen anything like that happen before. And of course, yeah, immediately I go into how did they do that? How did they do that?
And it's funny because in film history, I believe just a few years before that, you had the whatever version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which still looked a little
Oh,
and a little cheesy. And then that was like I think late 70s and then early 80s. You get to the thing, and they just practical effects have just kind of turned a corner. And I think that that whole genre just really kind of exploded in the 80s. They were able to just and a lot of that stuff, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, they all kind of feed into each other. And
mhm.
a lot of the stuff now with like Lucasfilm with their volume, where it's just a big room and they use a video game engine to just
Oh, you're talking about the Unreal Engine.
yeah, and they can that way they can just kind of bring the planet to you. You don't have to really go anywhere. They can shoot stuff in Redondo Beach.
Fascinating.
Look like
Yeah, I'm honestly excited about the possibilities of Unreal Engine in terms of, you know, yeah, locations, lighting, all of those things are now sort of a non-issue if you want to get really creative. So for a certain tier of people, like that's going to be life changing. You know what I mean? I, I I'm I'm sort of a tech nerd when it comes to new technologies of sharing stories. Um, and it doesn't matter to me sort of like whether it's like a low tech version like Discord where it could be like a text to text, or whether it's something as like life changing and like something where you need a building as sort of creating these Unreal Engine stages. um I really love the fact that people are developing new ways to tell stories, and I just want to play with all of them.
oh
That's
yeah,
my problem is I just want to do everything and and break it all and make new stuff with it.
yeah, they're all tools in the toolbox. One thing though that I never stop getting a kick out of is just the simple solutions to because me being a writer, I can write it, but then you have to go somewhere and
Mhm.
make it into a film, and sometimes they don't exactly gel or meet, and you have to come up with solutions on the day. And
Try doing it in real life too. That's what we do with the immersive theater. I mean, an immersive theater show is sort of like one take movie combined with a play combined with a game that you only get, yeah, like I said, you get one crack at it, you know.
oh yeah, I'm sure it's something as simple as somebody trips over a cord that's not taped down or takes a bad step on a staircase, and you're like,
I'm thinking just in terms of creating like an effect or a monster or something like that, something that's going to require an audience's suspension of disbelief, um, being able to execute that on any kind of a budget, is always that's really sort of biggest challenge in any sort of visual creative endeavor, is to deliver something that engages with your audience's imagination within the budget that you have.
well, let me ask you this because this is something that's gone back since the dawn of cinema, and I could go either way about this because it's all about the execution of it. Is when it comes to horror films, do you for your own personal taste, I'll say, do you prefer more shadow or less shadow? Do you show the whole monster in the first third of the movie, or do you wait for a reveal in the last third because you're not sure how it's going to come
Mhm.
off?
Well, I think it always sort of depends on what kind of a story you're setting off to tell. Are you is your story more of a suspense story? Because if it's more of a suspense story, then less is more. That's why Jaws works so well, is because it's just suspense. It's just cranking up the tension, cranking up the tension. Or is character piece like something like Shape of Water, where like you've got a character piece about this essentially alien god, you know. So you're going to need to reveal it earlier on. You're going to need to know. You're going to need to see more of it in action. So for me, I approach it as a cinematographer from what kind of a story are we trying to tell? Whose story is this? Is this the monster story? Is this the person story? That's my opinion. I don't think that there's a right or wrong.
It's not. It's still down to opinion, basically. But
yeah, but I do think that there are right and wrong approaches for telling those little sort of subgenres of stories. If you give away too much in a suspense movie, you're just not going to have the same level as you would.
And that's the danger. And anything that either I've made or I'll say like in a lot of independent production stuff I've seen, because nobody just, unless you're a big studio, you just don't have the CGI budget.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you only get that one chance for a first reveal of said killer, said creature. And if it doesn't go well, you lose the audience. Like
Mm-hmm.
right away, just fraction of a second of going like, oh, that's a guy in a suit.
Yeah, I know. I know. I for a while I used Eric Bork as a script consultant. He'll read your material, give you feedback and stuff like that. He's a fantastic guy. He was one of the writers on Band of Brothers. Uh, you know, gives you really good, solid feedback about your writing. And I used him to sort of help develop myself into where I am now, story wise. And what he said to me was that when stories fail, they fail at the conceptual level. So I take that to mean as if you don't know exactly what kind of a story you're telling, then that's where you kind of go wrong. If you know what kind of a story you're telling, you'll know how to structure it. You'll know how to put the pieces in place to get it to where it needs to be. And that's really what I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of knowing what kind of a story I'm telling and knowing what sort of a structure I'm going to have to tell that story. Structure is sort of everything. And it's not sort of a natural thing for me. I'm a very chaotic person by nature. I am like, again, like I said, if something can be broken, I will find a way to break it, because like I just like to push them to their extremes and see sort of what happens with things. I'm more of an experimental filmmaker than any other kind of filmmaker. And yeah, sometimes things break good, sometimes things break bad, but you always have to put them together in a way that will satisfy your audience, because you're trying, we're not, even though art is cool and it's great and it's freeing, at the same time, it's not only all about us, we're making it for somebody else.
That's true. That's true. And the lengths that people are willing to go to get something complete in camera, or to realize a shot that they have in their head that no one else can kind of perceive. And it doesn't matter what kind of movie it is, it doesn't matter the budget, it's just how are you going to make it work. And two examples that I always tell people, and people always throw this in my face when they say budget, budget, budget. And I say, yeah, but when you don't have a budget, you're forced to be creative. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
something so much better than you ever thought because you're on the day, you're under the gun. And so the first example is the Evil Dead movies, Sam Raimi.
Absolutely.
There was this thing of like, well, how do we get this feeling that this entity is coming through the woods and chasing Bruce Campbell? We don't have a steady cam. We
Mm-hmm.
don't, we can't risk our one or two camera guys like, breaking, turning an ankle or something, because then we're screwed and we can't finish the film. And so they said, you know what, screw it. All right, we're gonna get some duct tape and we're gonna get some straps and we're gonna strap the camera to a 2x4 and
Mm-hmm.
we're just gonna start recording, not even with the camera guys, just two guys, I don't grips, whatever you want to call them, and they're gonna hoist up the camera. And Bruce, you just run that way and look over your shoulder, look freaked out and like scared. And then you see it in the movie, and it's like, holy shit, you really do, because they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
slightly at an angle, and the Foley helps too, and any kind of weird sound effect or fog you can throw in, but you really do feel like he's being chased by something that's not human because it is so steady and it's tilting.
Absolutely.
A guy
Uh,
in the woods,
yeah.
that's never going to happen. And the other example I have of that is people say, well, like, oh, well, that wasn't possible, 40 years before that. I said, not true. It's during the making of Citizen Kane. Orson Welles was telling Greg Toland, I believe is the DP on that.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying like, this shot of Kane as the politician being defeated in his political office. He's like, I want to show this big man, but I want to show how far he's fallen, and I want to do that in camera. Oh well, we'll put the camera here. No, it's got to be lower. We'll put the camera here. Nope, it's got to be lower. Like Orson, we can't
Mm-hmm.
put the floor is here, and he goes, fuck that noise, and he comes back with an axe and he hacks up the studio floor. He says, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it out of my salary. And they dug a fucking hole in the floor and put the whole, how big the camera rigs on the crane
Yeah, yeah.
back then, how big this hole had to be. And then there's pictures of him like, leaning on Toland's shoulder, like, and they've got the tape measure out, and then he's like, okay, now I'm gonna go walk in front of the camera. And it's just like, no one would have done that before. No one would have taken an axe to a floor and put the camera in the floor. So it's just showing you like everybody's going to think you're crazy, but no one ever argues with the finished product.
Yeah. Oh, Orson Welles like is one of my favorite like personalities of all time, just like yeah, like outside of directing, like man, like what an interesting character. And yeah, you have to be inventive on these things, like what it doesn't matter what your budget is, whether you're doing a studio uh film or whether you're doing a no budget film, you just sort of have to be inventive in order to not only just tell the story, I mean, which is always the most important thing, but yeah, but to push things forward. Everything that you do should push something forward, whether it's yourself or someone else or the boundaries of the medium or I think everything that we do should have some sort of forward momentum for someone.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, both of those strategies, the Toland strategy and the Raimi strategies, are things that I've used,
Oh yeah.
in these, in especially in Ugly Sweater Party, which was the first feature film that I shot. Man, we got so creative with that. We actually lived out in the camp that we shot the movie at while we were shooting it. We just stayed there and shot all of these things, and it was, we were charging batteries on the fly, and I mean, we didn't even have a monitor for the camera, so like there were days where I was just running off of like what I imagined the focus to be, and the histogram, I'm just like taking it on faith, and dialing in the settings and things like that. It was the it was just such a really amazing, fun burst of creativity. Aaron Minto, the director, is just so good at assembling these casts of wild characters and then putting them together into something unique. And we just pulled like sort of every strategy in the book there. We used Raimi style cam. We used drones for the first time. That was my first time also ever working with a drone photographer. We just sort of pulled all of these little tricks out to stretch every little production value that we possibly could, um, and it was such an informative experience. I highly recommend um, going out into the wilds of California and camping for a week while shooting a feature film.
I
Uh,
mean,
but but do it before the mosquitoes hatch.
true. And this is something that I brought up with Jen Nangle too, which
Hmm.
we are so lucky in terms of living in Southern California that within 2 hours in pretty much every direction we can film something on a cliff beach side, or we can go to Big Bear, or in the snow, or we can go to Joshua Tree, or inner city, something like that, and it's all within this 2 hour radius, which I don't think a lot of other places in the country kind of have that. So you can
It
literally think of anything, and if you have the time and the way to get there in Southern California, you can make it happen for location filming.
you can, and even though with everything that's happened in the last few years, I know that it's sort of messed up our communities, that we had built up here, and that was the hardest part. Was a lot of the people who were working on these projects and helping with things, they ended up having to leave state or take on another responsibility. um, the most valuable resource in Los Angeles are the other actors and filmmakers that live here, because there's so much experience out there and so much equipment and so many stories to tell. One of the things that I always encourage people to do when they come out here is to, like, not just think about your own dreams, but like really pay attention to other people's dreams too, because you never know when someone else's dream and your dream are going to intersect. And by helping other people with theirs, that does more for your own dreams than anything else possibly could.
Oh yeah, I'm always cognizant, and I'm sure you are as well. I'm not online nearly as much as I used to be with social media. I try to, plug the podcast when I can and a few other things, but I do notice when either people that I know that work on magazines or for writing, they put a submission announcement out, or people looking for scripts or short films, or people saying like, "Hey, we're filming in this area this weekend, these hours.
Hmm.
If you've had your vaccines, let us know, and if you want to come and just be in the background of a fight scene or something, wear your own clothes, blah blah blah." So I'm always kind of looking like, okay, if I have the time, or can I make it, or I do want to like work with these people and let's figure something out. So there's always somebody that's saying like, online, I need help with this, or if
Hmm.
we're taking submissions for this or this, and I'm sure you see that stuff as well.
Yeah, I had the really interesting experience of I was shooting 16 bits, which is Aaron's follow-up to Ugly Sweater Party, and we started it on one side of the pandemic,
Okay.
and then we stopped production, and then we finished production sort of in the middle of the pandemic during the break before all the variants really started flowing in, right after the immunizations happened. So we had this project that it started before anything happened, and then had to stop, and then we were able to finish it, and now it's in post and should be out any day now, my understanding.
Awesome. Hey, congrats on that. That's great.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's a very unusual uh horror sci-fi comedy. Since it's Aaron, it sort of defies genre boundaries, but it's it's really really cool. It's a fun concept, and I think that people really enjoy it. Kevin Caliber just kills it as the as Wax Waster in this game slash movie. It's really fun, but getting it done over a pandemic was something too that I'd never imagined happening, and the work protocols that we had to put into place to get things done, and the how to plan scenes and reshoot scenes for with which you just couldn't safely do them the way you had planned them before. The, it was a the pandemic was definitely a massive creativity challenger.
Oh yeah, and the big thing was always, and this is something I ran into, was I had a few projects that were in the offing in early 2020 that I was going to work on and possibly direct, and then
Mhm.
those opportunities sadly went away, and we couldn't make it happen again because people scheduling conflicts, and like you said, people traveling out of state to work on other jobs. But
Yeah.
that's just so true across the board. And one of my favorite stories, and one of my favorite directors from the last couple of years, Robert Eggers. I
Mhm.
love The Witch, The Lighthouse. I'm so excited to see his Viking revenge story called The Northman. Was like
Yes.
when they were making The Northman, pandemic happened and they had to shut down. And Alexander Skarsgård, who plays the title character, said that it shut down for so long, for precaution's sake, they had to, with all of those interactions and fight scenes and brutal stabbings and beheadings and all that jazz, that he went off, he cut his hair, his trimmed his beard, went off and made an indie film, came back 6 months later, but the whole time he'd been like working out and doing everything.
Mhm.
But and then the time that he finished that other film, he still had another 6 months or 5 months to grow back the beard, to grow out his hair, to put in the Viking braids and all that stuff. And he worked out so much that the director was like, "Well, you're too big. You don't even look human anymore." He's like, "We're gonna have to like drape you in furs and clothes and hide it, and then really unleash the beast at certain scenes." But it just goes to show you, like, oh, that pandemic was just awful for continuity for people, especially had like
Oh, for sure.
shows where their kids were the focus, like Stranger.
Hmm.
I'm sure Stranger Things wanted to do a season 5, but it's been 3 years since season 3. So some of those kids look like they could have their own kids now.
Yeah, I was watching. I don't really watch a lot of like television other than a few things I watch with my partner. But I saw, is it the Goldbergs? The
Oh
is
yeah.
that the is that they're and I believe conceptually, like, literally the concept of the show is that it's just set in the 80s, correct? Like that's its shtick.
That's
Is
the
it's the
conceit.
80s show. Yeah. Um, all of the characters in there look like they're 40-year-olds playing like high school characters.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of what it was, a very interesting thing. But then it made me think about like Happy Days, where you had, you clearly had older people playing teenagers there, and that's sort of always been a thing. But yeah, it sort of shocked me to sort of see that happening again. I like to pay attention to sort of media patterns and things like that that are going on. So we had our big 80s phase already with Stranger Things, and all of that. And I think now we're heading into a 90s sort of revival,
Oh, I'm sure there's going to
and
be they're going to be busting out the flannels pretty soon.
yeah, but it'll be really interesting to make of what this era will be like nostalgically. How do you sell nostalgia to this era? That's going to be a
You know what I've seen the
challenge.
rise of in the last 2 years that was clearly there years before, but it was either in the marginalized or in the dark recesses, is the rise of the self-help guru. And I've interviewed a few on the show where it's just they even said, 2018, 2019, they were just kind of doing this as like a side business out of their house, and now they're sort of not quite, can't use the term therapists, but they're just spiritualized life coaches. I don't know what I would even call it, but the
Yeah,
thing
I
where,
understand.
yeah, and it's just 2 years ago, you would hear about it, and now it's just prevalent with everybody's, I think, a lot of people had a lot of different career changes or were laid off due to
Hmm.
COVID-19. So they're searching, and then these self-help gurus or self-made appointed goddesses or whatever just kind of filled that vacuum. And it's
I understand that. I definitely sort of help people in that aspect some ways, because I think we always sort of need to be here for each other. I don't monetize that because that's me. Uh, but like I totally understand the need for a role like that. One of the other hats that I wear is I do magic. I'm one of the magicians, and I've been working on I try to weave a little bit of what I consider to be magic into everything that I do, because it's to me part of all one grand idea. Uh, I respect the need for people like that. I don't always know whether those people have their clients' best interest at heart.
right.
Um, I tend to be a little skeptical about it, just because, again, I study patterns, and for every sort of spiritual leader that works out, feels like there's 10 more that don't, um yeah. I I think we're in such an interesting place post pandemic where people are looking for things to believe in, because none of the other institutions that they've been raised with have been there for them. Um, you know, and you understand you understand how things are by their actions, not by their words.
Right.
And this is a place where people have needed action, and they haven't gotten a lot of it. So they're clearly looking for things that are going to help them. Um, hope they find those things. I think it's, in a way, it's time to either establish some new institutions or uh, revamp some old ones, because it's clearly not working for most people. And I'm a fan of looking for creative solutions in advance rather than having to deal with the fallout of, oh shit, everything fell apart. Now we're going to have to build it again.
Right? Rebuild it from the ground up. So let me ask you this. I'll pivot and I'll say, have you been on a like a one tank trip or a vacation somewhere in Southern California and seen either a landmark or, excuse me, seen maybe a rock cropping at a park or a seaside and thought like, this would be a great setting for a horror movie. Why has no one tried this? Or I'm gonna try this,
Oh, all the
inspired
time.
something in you that were like, ah,
All the time. All the time. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the the setting here before COVID. With our theater company, we would stage things that would begin in public areas, and then they would actually finish in our um, theater space. But we would weave narratives where you would actually meet people in a public setting or go to a place, and 100% we would choose them for their vibe or for the aesthetic of the look. Yeah, I attended a private immersive show recently that was one of the most spectacular settings I've ever seen in a live show. And the aesthetic 100% added to the experience. I'm always looking for weird spots, or a spot that's evocative of something. It could be some place that has like a special beauty to it, or someplace where the light just comes in really nice. As a photographer, you just really appreciate natural lighting when you can get it. um I do try to when I'm staging something, I do try to light it, in some way, and have some sort of direction with it. But sometimes you can find things that are just naturally there that are perfect. The example I can give you for that is, for one of our live shows, we had a scene where you had to burst your way out of a prison, and shoot your way out with a grenade launcher. Okay, so after you do that, you have to steal a car. Well, you've negotiated. You haven't really steal the car. You've negotiated with the hostage over a walkie-talkie to get keys to the car. And as you're leaving the site, we had to take a route in order to get them to the drop-off spot. I found a gas station that had a light bulb that was just flickering.
Oh.
And I would go and I would park under the flickering light and have this scene. And it was really unnerving because you're just sitting there in that. You know how gas station light is so intense, right? And it's that sort of sodium yellow thing. And it was just flickering, and it gave a really beautiful intensity to the scene. And then we would, take off and go for the rest of the scene. I just found this place sort of randomly the week before the show started, and then the week after the show wrapped, they fixed the light and
I
it
was
was
going to
gone.
bring that up, but like the timing
Yep.
was perfect. Yeah.
Yep. And
You would have missed it. Yeah.
and so what's cool about it was, not only was it like a scene that was perfect in the moment, but it's also a place that's never going to happen again. Unless the next light bulb messes up. But you have to sort of, you need to plan meticulously. Everything needs to be meticulously planned and thought up and taken care of. But you also have to be open to seeing these little accidents, because they're not accidents. They're the things that really tie it all together and make it perfect.
Yeah. I refer to those as happy accidents, where
Yeah.
you're on a set somewhere and it's not working out, and then some undisclosed, unthought of X factor happens. And so you can't get your actor on set or something to play this killer that's kind of lurking by the house. And but for whatever reason the weather changes and you have a windy day. All you need to do is just slowly pan over, and the wind is really blowing out this tree, and then there's another tree in the background. And then all you need to do is just have somebody way far away, out of focus, so when that blowing leaves just kind of settle down, and all of a sudden it's someone just steps back behind a tree, and it's not that actor. It's just one of those things where, and I've done that trick before too, where it's like, thank you for random windy day that was forecast.
So yeah, for me, magic is knowing that those things are going to be there and being aware of them when they happen, and also having like the faith that they're going to be there and not worrying about it, because you've got a million other things to worry about. You've got to get places on time. You've got to make sure that the actors get fed. You've got to do all this other stuff. Um, Understanding that when the time comes, you'll know what to do because you've sort of already you've already made it happen. Your energy that you have put into this thing has already created it. It's already going to happen. So your role as an actor, or whatever you're doing within this world that you've created at this point, is just to react to what you've created. And um, that's, for me, that's sort of the essence of what magic is in terms of performance.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Um, so we've been going at this just under an hour, but I want to give you a few moments here to kind of let people know where they can find your work online. Obviously, you've got quite a bit on IMDb and YouTube, but if you have social media accounts or a website, I'll let you go ahead and use this time to kind of broadcast that.
Sure. My name is Paul Stephen Edwards, Stephen with a PH, and I'm available on most social media sites. The big three are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you would like information about Black Mass is BL4KM4SS. Yeah, I used the difficult lead spelling. Sorry, that was my choice. Um, you can reach us at Black Mass on Instagram, or send us an email at blackmassbl4km4ss@gmail.com. We can send you information. You have to apply for our shows. We have a little application. It's a Google Doc. Answer a few questions to sort of determine whether you're right for us, whether we're right for you. And if everything works out, then we send you links to the shows. We give you a lot of information about us because we are on the more extreme side of immersive theater. I am also a glitch artist, and you can find me doing that mostly on Instagram and Facebook. See my IMDb for my other credits, and if you want to reach out to me, feel free, and I'll listen.
Excellent. So to kind of wrap things up, I am kind of curious to pick your brain about this. What would you recommend? Let's say someone is moving or has already moved to the LA area and they're looking to get involved. Maybe not just in horror, but kind of getting their foot into independent filmmaking. What are some kind of advice tidbits you could offer in terms of pitfalls to avoid and kind of things that you yourself have witnessed and experienced and gone through, some do's and don'ts maybe, because there will be a few young people watching this that are going to be kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I would say the big thing here is just to find your support system, because you're going to need it. Los Angeles is absolutely brutal to people who move here from out of state. It can be horrible. There are people here who will take advantage of you in every way you can imagine, and some ways that you can't. But there will also be the best people that you'll ever meet. And your job really is to find that. So my number one thing would be use your BS meter, really suss out people when you meet them and sort of figure out where they're going to fit into your life. If they're not helping you, don't spend your energy on them, because there are people here who will sort of take all your energy if you let them. And the other thing I would say is just see if you can find, the ideal is to find yourself a situation where you're able to be creating on a regular basis. with people, because that's really key. I was fortunate when I first started uh, my film career. The second time I went to film school and then dropped out and then did nothing for a while. But then I got involved with a film collaborative, and we made a short film every month for
Wow.
2 years straight. And that was probably the biggest, most instrumental thing toward helping me at all, was just to develop a regular work process where I'm collaborating with people and making things happen. And you're also artistically accountable to the people. If you say that you're going to do something, you have to get it done. And that that goes a long way.
Yeah, that's all sound advice across the board. I've had younger people ask me, like, well, what's the value of film school? And I said, well, me personally, I didn't go to film school. I have friends that have and
Mm-hmm.
had good and or bad experiences. But I will agree with you 1,000% on nothing compares to actually going out there with a camera, with some friends, homemade costumes or just stuff from your closet, and just start making, these 3 to 5 minute shorts just to do it, not because you think you're going to make, some epic film, but because it's like you've got to just learn it. And if
Mm-hmm.
doing it with people and that you already have fun with and you trust, then you're doing it for the right reasons, for the love of doing it, because you have a story to tell and you all want to be involved with it regardless of the outcome. Because I will admit, like, I've made a lot of shitty short films, just the cheese factor, and it's just because you think, like, I'm making apocalypse now, but you're making apocalypse crap. So you really have to just know that in your head, like, you're gonna fail, you're gonna suck. But it's that line from the whichever one of the Batman movies it was, well, it's not how you fall, it's how you pick yourself up. So that's really key. And that's my advice to people, is just go out there. I mean, kind of like the name of my show, just make your own fun. Just find your like you were saying, your tribe, your group of people, and just get out there and just make it happen. And eventually, if you stick with it, this is the key to Los Angeles, is so many young people come out here with their little nest egg of their part-time job or something, and they get roommates and they go through the process and they're like, man, it's been 6 months and I'm not a movie star, or I'm not Steven Spielberg yet, what's going on? And it's like, no, 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 you've got to be in the trenches for years and make a lot of schlock before you find that right core group of people. And then you just got to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. That's just my own personal experience. So
Yeah, same. I mean, I never wanted to be Steven Spielberg either. Like,
already is a
that's,
Spielberg, right?
there's exactly, and he's doing a great job at, with
He's the best
Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg we know.
Yeah, it's the other thing. I think once you come out here is sort of, I think this just sort of goes for anybody wherever you are, is just to define your own success. Like you say, make your own fun. Define your own success. Don't let anybody tell you what you need to be successful, because, you know, why aim for somebody else's idea of what you're supposed to be? Be yourself.
Right. I mean, and everybody starts somewhere. This is something that I've had to tell people over and over and over again. I believe James Cameron started off as a model maker for Roger Corman. So
Oh yeah, Battle Beyond the Stars. That was a one of my favorites.
it's just one of those things where people say, like, oh, well, I want to go out and make what he's doing now. And it's like, look, they're inventing computer technology to do what he's doing now. You're not going to be there. Just worry about the story. Worry about, getting something finished. Don't, worry. If you can change the medium by accident, great. But no one really
Mhm.
sets out to just, I'm going to change the medium today.
Yep. And that reminded me of one last little piece of advice. I think I have a friend who told me, you don't learn by doing, you learn by finishing. So yeah, like get your thing, make your thing, and then finish it, and then move on to the next thing and take what you learned out of that. Don't spend years trying to make something perfect. Finish your thing so that you can take the lesson and move on. And that is, I think, more key toward, for me, that's made the whole process more fun than it would have been than if I had been working on a feature film all this time for years and years, trying to make it absolutely perfect. I would have missed out on all these other wonderful opportunities.
And all those opportunities inform everything that you're working on now. So, well, I want to take the time to thank you again for being on the show. Excellent guest. Thank you so much for taking the time and letting me pick your brain. I knew it would be an interesting conversation. So yeah, with that, I'll say this wraps up the show. And yeah, you look forward to it being on YouTube here in a few days. So thank you, Paul, once again.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a great weekend.
You too, man. Have a great time. I will catch you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.